I'm Dr. Uche, a practicing physician who's been coaching others to write and publish their biographies since 2013. The first autobiographies I brought to publication were for my dad and granddad, and those took more than 5 years and lots of mistakes. On this channel, I will show you the tools I use to perfect the process so that you can have your biography done in 6 months or less without the delays and mistakes. Remember to subscribe and share with your friends. Let's dig in. You may or may not have thought about this, but this is really important when you're writing a biography for an older relative. This is something all of us really could use. We could learn from it. It can really help us charting our way through life, and it can help us to not be constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. It can also apply to us very closely compared to some other stranger. I mean, your piece from your older relative can apply to you much better than something you read from a stranger. What am I talking about? Stay tuned. Yes, I am still going on with how to write for an older relative and the sort of things you need to ask that would be great to read about. Today, I actually want to dig into vulnerability. Yes, vulnerability can make or break a biography, a memoir, an autobiography. Here's where we really get to be honest about good things and things that were not as good, successes and mistakes, okay? All of us have that. I think of my 20s and 30s, and it's like a blur as far as certain problems that came up and how I dealt with them. I think of my 40s at this point, that's where I am, and I can see with more clarity because obviously I've matured over time. I've matured age-wise, brain-wise, okay? I've matured by learning from my mistakes, and there are things I do differently. By the same token, there are many things I read about my father's life, and I learn what not to do. So I think it's really crucial to allow your older relative to be vulnerable. And how do you do that? You ask them honest questions. What did you do right about this situation? You have mentioned this other thing and it seems like you regret something. And really just use open-ended questions to allow them to tell you the successes, the failures, the lessons learned. All of us have something to learn from someone else, but I think even more importantly, we have a lot to learn from people in our family because our lives are more similar somewhat compared to a stranger in another generation. So why did your parents end up living in this city versus another one? Why did they end up having close friendships maintained over decades with some people and maybe not some other people? And here you have to be tactful. I'm not an attorney. I'm not the one to tell you how to put things in your biography or story that could paint other people in a negative light. I'm here to tell you how you can allow your older relative to be vulnerable. You can even do that without mentioning names, but you allow them to say things they got right, things they got wrong, things they regretted. And by so doing, there's a lot you can learn from their life. So this is the main story here. That's the main thing I wanted to convey today is allow your family member vulnerability, ask them open-ended questions. Remember that both the good and the not so good, the successes and the failures make for great reading in an autobiography, in a memoir, in a biography, and that you have things to learn from the journey of those who went before you. There are things you may decide to do differently. There are things you may decide to avoid, because remember that looking across generations, you definitely have a lot more to learn from your mother's journey you grew up in the household, you were raised by this person, you have a lot more to learn from her journey compared to a stranger in her generation. Okay, so please endeavor to bring out those stories and write them out. Find a tactful way, again, consult an attorney if you need to, but find a tactful way to include them in the life story of your older relative. Have you ever, in discussions with your parent or grandparent, come across things you feel they have regrets about, things they might have done differently had they known better, or anything that you think is a lesson you could use in your life? Let me know in the comments. I'd very much love to hear, and I'll see you in my next video.